This Part 2 video is to assist you in the programming and calibration of your iSeries tank monitor system with the software version seen here. The iSeries tank monitor system is the best and most accurate tank monitor system in the industry, manufactured by Acugage Manufacturing. In Part 1, we went over the physical installation of your iSeries system. Please see the link in the description if you would like to see that video. After your installation is complete, it's time to configure the panel to your tanks. To access the configuration menu, follow these steps. Press and hold the menu key while turning the power on. Continue to hold the menu key until Enable Tanks appears. In the menu, we have the following options. We will begin with Enable Tanks. The default setting is tanks 1, 2, and 3 are enabled. The rest are disabled. If you would like to change that setting, press OK to enter the Enable Tanks function. Otherwise, press the Up key to move on to naming your tanks. Use the Up and Down keys to select whether each tank should be enabled. Press Up for Yes, Enabled. Press Down for No, Disabled. Repeat this process for each tank. Once you've configured all the tanks, the unit will prompt you to press OK if you want to save the changes. After completing the Enable Tanks function, you are brought to the Name Tank screen. You can select names for each of your tanks from a pre-configured list, or you can customize the tank name to whatever you choose. The pre-programmed default tank names are Tank 1, Fresh Tank, Tank 2, Gray Tank, Tank 3, Black Tank, and Tank 7, Propane Tank. The rest say tank number and the respective number. If you don't need to change the default names, press Up to skip to the Calibrate Tank settings. If you would like to change any of the tank names, press OK to enter the Name Tanks function. Use the Up and Down buttons to navigate to the tank you'd like to rename. Press OK to rename the selected tank. There are two words that make up the tank name. Use the Up and Down keys to select the first word from the pre-configured list of words. If you don't see exactly what you want, you can create your own custom name. While on the first word, go down until you see Custom Name. We will come back to this, so sit tight until then. After finding your desired first word, press OK. This will allow you to choose the second word. Use the Up and Down keys to select the second word from the pre-configured list of words. After finding what you would like for the second word, press OK. The unit will prompt you to press OK to save the new name. If you decide to use the Custom Name Builder, you can create your own custom name. You must still be choosing the first word. Use Menu to go back if you need. Use the Down key until you see Custom Name. Press OK to create your custom name. Press OK to choose the current letter and move on to the next one. Press Menu for the unit to prompt you to save the new name. Use the arrow keys to choose the letters. Simultaneously press both the arrow keys to switch between upper and lower case. Press Up for letters, press Down for numbers and other characters. Remember, press OK for the letters you want saved, and then use Menu to prompt to save. After renaming the tank, use the Up and Down keys to navigate to any other tanks you would like to rename. Once you've named your tanks, use the Menu key to exit the Name Tanks function. This will bring you to the next setting, which is Calibrate Tanks. Press OK to enter the Calibrate Tanks function. Each tank needs to be calibrated at both empty and full levels to be accurate. It does not matter which level you do first. You do not have to do them at the same time, but it will not be accurate until they are both done. On the bottom line, you see the saved calibration numbers for this tank. On the left is what the panel has saved as the empty setting. On the right is what the panel has saved as the full setting. In the middle is the current live or raw reading from the sensor. This reading is what the panel sees from the sensor in this tank right now. This number does not represent gallons or percentages. Use the Up and Down keys to navigate between the tanks. Tanks 7 and 8 have defaults of 0 for empty and 90 for full. This setting is for propane tanks that already have the standard 90 ohm sending unit in them. The other tanks have defaults of 1 for empty and 200 for full. These are not accurate settings and must be changed. Each setup is different due to varying thickness of tank, size of tanks, and each specific foil application. Note, if you have a resistive sensor for tank 7 or 8, such as a WEMA sensor or a float sensor, by default the panel uses the low ohm reading for empty and the high ohm reading for full. If your resistive sensor is opposite to that, for example, 0 ohms is full and 240 ohms reads as empty, please visit our website and download the inverted calibration instructions on the tech support page under resistive sensors. All TechEdge supplied sensors are to be used on tanks 1 through 6 unless you have purchased an Integrity 8 version which uses TechEdge sensors on all 8 tanks. Note, when using the custom-made TechEdge diesel sensor rod, the recommended settings are 1 for empty and 153 for full. Some customers set empty to 20 to leave a reserve. Use the up or down keys to navigate to the tank you wish to calibrate. Press OK to calibrate the selected tank. You will be prompted to select the calibration method for that tank. The simple calibration is by setting only an empty and full calibration, which will be the first option on the screen. This option is what most tanks will need. In rare instances, like having a very irregularly shaped tank, you may need to calibrate for 25% increments. You should always start your calibration process with just the empty full setting. After you run a few tanks, you can decide if you would like to do the 25% option. More information on this will follow. The last option is manual input. This option is only to be used if you already know the settings for your tank, like on a diesel rod, or if you previously recorded your settings and just need to re-input them. You can record your settings in the manual for future reference and can use this option at that time if you need to. Use the up and down keys if you would like to navigate to a different option other than empty full. Press OK at the option you wish to begin calibration. We suggest focusing on one tank at a time, so you know if you have your wiring correct. When calibrating a tank, the order does not matter. You do not need to do it all at the same time, but it will not be accurate until they are both done. When calibrating for empty, the tank must be empty. When calibrating for full, the tank must be full. Likewise, if you happen to be doing the 25% increment calibration, you will also need to have the fluid in the tank at each specified level for the 25%, 50%, and 75% calibrations. On the left is the setting you are calibrating. In the middle is the current saved value. On the right is the live reading from the sensor. Note, as you empty or fill your tank, the live reading should change. If it doesn't, there is a problem that must be addressed before recording your calibration settings. Use the up and down keys to select which level you want to set right now. Press OK to update the saved setting with the current reading. Ideally, you will have a minimum difference of at least 50 between empty and full for a better resolution. Larger differences apart will further improve the accuracy. This difference is not required, however, you will see warnings during the calibration process if the difference is less than 50. For the 25% increment option, the difference between your empty and full settings should be at least 75 to 100 for this option to work properly. Again, you must fill the tank to each level when you are calibrating that point. If you have less than the desired difference, you can add foil to the inside of your original foil strips to bring the strips together. This will increase the difference between the readings. Please only do one side at a time and check the reading. Make sure the foil overlaps the original by about ½ inch and stays consistent over the entire height of the tank. It is okay to cover some of the copper tape. You may need to add foil to the outside of each strip for very short tanks or very thick tanks. Make sure the foil is overlapping and consistent for the whole strip. Always check your readings before adding additional strips. Here we see an example of a basic empty-full calibration. Notice there is water in the tank in the beginning. The tank is drained so we can set the empty calibration. We press OK to update the saved setting. Before calibrating for full, we fill the tank. Once the tank is full, we press OK to update the saved setting. If you are calibrating and see calibration error, then something is not properly configured. Check to make sure that your empty setting is less than your full setting. Check to make sure your empty and full settings aren't too close. For example, less than 25 apart. Is your full value too low? For example, less than 10? If you are using the 25% increment option, make sure your settings are in order. Empty should be less than 25%, 25% should be less than 50%, and so on. Check the troubleshooting guide in the manual for further help. Use the menu key to leave calibrating the tank. Use the up and down keys to navigate to another tank to calibrate. Repeat the previous instructions for each tank. Every tank must be calibrated, except propane tanks on tanks 7 or 8 that have the standard 90 ohm sending unit. Press menu to leave the calibrate tanks function. This will bring you to the option to set up the tank alarms. The tank alarms have a default setting to be disabled. If you want to leave them disabled, press up to skip to the next section. If you would like to turn on alarms when the tanks are outside of the bounds that you set, press OK to enter the tank alarms function. The tank alarm configuration begins with the first enabled tank. Use the up and down keys to navigate to the tank you want to set the alarm on. Press OK to change the alarm settings for the selected tank. Use the up and down keys to make changes. Press up to alternate between enabled and disabled. In other words, alarms on or off. Press down to alternate between high and low. A high setting will have the alarm sound if the level rises above the set percentage. This is useful for waste tanks like gray or black. A low setting will have the alarm sound if the level drops below the set percentage. This is useful for supply tanks like fresh or propane. For our fresh tank, we want the low alarm. Press OK to move on to the next setting. If the alarm is enabled, you will be given the option to set the percent for the alarm. Note, when choosing the alarm percentage, you will see arrows in the top right. Use the up and down keys to choose the percentage. Press OK to save. The saved settings will be shown on the screen. If the tank alarm is enabled, you will see alarm above or alarm below, followed by the percentage. Use the up or down keys to navigate to the next tank you wish to configure. Repeat the previous instructions for any other tanks. Press menu to leave. The next setting is the volume. This volume controls how loud the buzzer is when the alarm is sounding. To leave the unit at its default volume, press the up key to skip to the next setting. To change the volume, press OK. Use the up and down keys to choose the volume level preferable to you. Press OK to save. You will then be brought to the tank scan frequency settings. By default, it will scan every 5 minutes. If this works for you, press up to skip to the next section. If you wish to change it, press OK. Use the up and down keys to choose your desired setting. Options range from don't automatically scan to scan every 2 hours. Press OK to save your selection. If you are happy with the current brightness, press up to skip to the next section. Otherwise, press OK to enter the screen brightness settings. Use the up and down key to choose your desired brightness. Press OK to save. This panel also monitors the voltage from the battery or other power source that is feeding the system. You can set an alarm if you would like to know when this voltage goes below a certain level. The default setting is to have this alarm off. If this works for you, press up to skip to the next section. Otherwise, press OK to change this setting and begin configuring your battery alarm. Use the up and down keys to turn the battery alarm off or on. Press OK to set the voltage level for the alarm. The battery alarm will sound when the voltage is less than or equal to this number. Use the up and down keys to choose your desired voltage. Press OK to save. You are now brought to the version screen. This screen displays the software version running on the device. Please note that when you purchase an iSeries tank monitor, it includes free software upgrades for life. It will just need to be sent in and shipping paid for. Use the up arrow to navigate to the next screen. Here is our phone number and website. We will come back to this momentarily. You are now ready to use the system. If you need to return to the setup menu at any time, power off the unit, press and hold the menu key, power the unit back on. Continue to hold the menu key until you see Enable Tanks. Use the arrow keys to navigate the settings. After configuring all your tanks, you are now ready to use the system. Press Menu to exit the programming options, or you can simply turn the power off and back on again. The device will now do an initial scan. After this scan, the monitor will go into sleep mode until it's ready for another automatic scan, or you do a manual scan. So the backlight will not disturb you when you don't need it. The screen will be off unless you are manually reading the tanks, or if the automatic scan finds one of the tanks out of the bounds that you set and the alarm is sounding. Pressing both the up and down arrows at the same time will do a scan of all the tanks. Pressing just one arrow will allow you to scan each tank individually. After it times out, the screen will shut off again until you press the arrows. Pressing menu while in running mode will stop the scan and turn the screen off. When a tank level is out of the bounds that you set, an alarm will sound on the next scan. Press OK to silence it until the next automatic or manual scan. You can silence the alarms completely if you don't want them going off at every scan. To do this, you will need to press menu to exit scanning. Press the menu and OK buttons simultaneously. This will bring you to a screen that says Audible Alarms. Here, you can mute or unmute all the alarms at the same time. Note the arrows in the bottom right. Use the up or down buttons to mute the audible alarms completely or to turn them back on again. Press OK to save. If you would like to mute just one alarm, you will need to go into the programming menu and turn the alarm off for that tank only. Everything we discussed is included in the manual. If you have troubleshooting needs or tech support questions not covered in the manual, please visit us online at www.tankedge.com. If your questions are still not answered there, please feel free to call our tech support line at 541-610-0401. Once the iSeries is installed correctly, we know that you will find it to be the most accurate tank monitor system on the market today. Thank you.